philosophy matters.
Hey, it's ZeroState this time.
Yeah.
Thought it was going to be the Philosopher.
Well, we are streaming both, to my channels and to your channels. So this is a special crossover episode here with ZeroState and, of course, the Philosopher. We are doing a little bit of a ZeroState focus, but welcome, everybody. Good to see you. I see some people already coming here. What's up, Liberty Prime? How's it going? So we're going to be doing a special interview today. We actually have a guest that you might have a kind of an intuition about what's going to be coming with our wear today. You can kind of see a little bit, and you got a little over there, right? You got a little bit the old Rob Hall swag. So we have a very special person. This person is the founder of the Libertarian Party Mises Caucus. He is also a mean karaoke and Ron Paul fanatic. It's our guest Michael Heise here, and we're going to be bringing him on to talk about what went down in Reno and what great plans he has coming up with the Mises Caucus. So welcome, Michael. Good to see you.
Welcome, Michael.
Thanks for having me, guys. Glad to be here.
Woo!
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's been one wild of a ride, to say the least. As I've been personally watching over these years, things just ramping up, more and more people joining, more people getting excited, more and more conflicts and people questioning and doubting and wondering. And then, of course, at the end, making it to the final finish line and showing everybody what was up and what was actually going to go down. So I'll give a little bit of kudos for that, making it all the way to the finish line, despite every pretty much say everything
in dominant fashion, I might add. Yeah,
right. Last minute. So and everybody here coming on and saying, "Hey, wait, what's up, Gabe? What's up, Arthur?
Hello.
What's going on? What's up,
guys?
What's up, Zach?
Canada.
This is Caucus for the win. There we go. What's up, Nick? How's it going? So. Again, just great to have everybody here and just checking out what it is that's going on with the Mises Caucus. And that's what we're going to be focusing on here with Michael, actually, is just talking about what he's been doing, some of the hard work he's been developing and the programs he's been developing for the caucus and for the plans with the LP. So could you tell us a bit about, kind of a summary here of what went down in Reno and what exactly you accomplished?
So, I mean, the Reno convention was a huge success for us. I mean, it was the culmination of almost 5 years of work for us. We fulfilled our promise to take over the Libertarian Party and fill it with the Liberty movement, Ron Paul libertarians, essentially. We did that by taking every single voting position on the Libertarian National Committee. So we went 17 for 17. And we've got all of our judicial committee candidates elected. So that's essentially like the court system of the Libertarian Party. And we got several platform changes made. One was to add secession back into the party or into the platform. That's something that I thought was really, really important because decentralization is the bee's knees these days. And it's really the only way out of the culture war as far as I'm concerned. So, I think that's going to have to be a viable discussion moving forward. So that was a big one. We got rid of some woke language in the platform, around, we condemn bigotry as irrational and repugnant. And, some people were really upset about that. But, we don't have these qualifiers for like the drug war. We don't say, well, we advocate the legalization of all drugs, but, I condemn heroin use as irrational and repugnant. It's like, no, like we let freedom sort that all out after the fact. And, the wokeism thing is huge. People, I kind of see the reactions to it as the difference between people who understand what's going on with wokeism, or I really prefer the term cultural Marxism. I feel like it's more descriptive. But how language is now being obfuscated and used as dialectics for collectivist political ends. And so we had to push that out because, the movement is not against this. The counterculture, the movement is against this. My bad. The counterculture of the country is really against this. And we really wanted to send that signal that we are in line with that movement and with that counterculture. So, we got that done. We removed the abortion plank and replaced it with nothing, which is another one that I thought was really, really important, like culturally speaking for the party. It's the Libertarian Party is it's a party for all libertarians, which means, it spans the spectrum from classical liberals to anarcho-capitalists. And, there is no consensus on abortion within that. And frankly, if we're going to have pro-life minarchists at the table, then the pro-life position has a seat at that table. It's not to say that might be your position, but it has a seat at the table. So we have to kind of exercise that, dare I say, tolerance, and let the parties and the candidates speak for themselves. So it's a huge change for the party, and as you can see, the messaging from the national Twitter and the Facebook is gone radical. It's gone back to its roots. We're having a great response.
A few days ago, like, yes.
And that's the nutshell version. I mean, what we wanted to do is we wanted to change the leadership. We wanted to bring it back to principle, but just as important as bringing it back to principle is bringing in people of high character. The party has been absolutely plagued with people of low character at the top of the party and its leadership, and that has kind of proliferated the culture of the party to kind of have like a culture of corruption, or a culture of accepting corruption and accepting cheating and accepting purges and all this stuff. So that had to be, I mean, I don't care if the people who were doing that were Rothbardian anarchists, that had to be absolutely repudiated. So that had to be done, and the culture of the party itself had to be changed. So I think we achieved all of that.
Seems like there was some drama that had to be overcome these past 5 years.
A little bit. Yeah, just a little bit.
Eating.
Absolutely. I think I really like your framing too, especially with how you're framing the platform versus the candidacy. I think that is really important, that the LP platform itself, that should be the core radical principles, the things that are absolutes in terms of core libertarian ideology about consent ethics, self-ownership, non-aggression, and then let the candidates individually speak on the things where there's more, disagreement or things like that. I completely agree. There's no reason to be alienating people over those issues, and to just allow candidates to sell it as they want within the context of property rights, non-aggression, and so on and so forth. So I think that's a brilliant move to do.
Yeah, I mean, and just within the confines of their own principles, if you're a pro-life minarchist and you're in Utah, you might have a very different situation than an anarchist in California. You know what I mean? Like, and so it gives everybody that kind of flexibility. And I think with that issue, as well as with like the borders and immigration issue, that there's, when you look at the first principle differences that separate anarchists and minarchists, you kind of have to accept that creates a spectrum of allowable canon, I would call it, within the whole libertarian spectrum. Even, again, it might not be, me and you are both ANCAP, so it might not be ours, but it's got that seat at the table, and then if you go all the way to the classical liberal end, and you look at some of the stuff that's in Justin Amash loves to quote the book Liberalism to Own Us or something like that, but some of the stuff that Mises advocated in that book that would not fly in today's Libertarian Party, so there's, from that classical liberal tradition all the way to the anarcho-capitalist, there's, on a few issues, there's a hell of a spectrum.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say the big unification there is that across the board, the general agreement is that the government needs to be cut and reduced in size, scope, and power across the board. I would say that's kind of what differentiates the libertarian mindset from any of the other major parties or any of the other ideologies, is this idea that the state is not the solution to life's problems. We need to think outside the state, and we do that in every area of life, reducing that interference and reducing the ways that the government is able to take from people and use it to fund perpetual wars and locking people in prisons over victimless crimes and so on and so forth.
Yeah, or making prisons out of their homes.
Right.
Yeah.
So when it comes to some of the changes so far that you've seen manifest, what are some of the successes that you've been especially proud of already, just moving forward as the positions are being filled and people are starting to pick and choose who's going to do what?
So are you talking in general, or like just since convention?
Yes, since convention up to this time, what are some of the successes you had, starting to get the ball rolling on things changing?
Well, it's the thing that makes me happy, and like this is kind of behind the scenes stuff, so I'm not going to give like all the details, but like just in communications with Angela and stuff like that, there's going to be a huge unwinding of bureaucracy, I think. The party is its systems are archaic. And they're not adequate for the modern day. And I think you're going to start to see a lot of improvements there. I think you're going to start to see the scaling up of a lot of the tactics that the caucus use. And I think the caucus, one of the functions that I think the caucus is going to serve and has served, is to be almost like an R&D incubator where we kind of beta test certain things and shoot them up. So like, I mean, this shouldn't be a radical improvement, but I think you're going to start to see like the advent of like task management software used across the board and across the committee, so that everybody can kind of see what's going on and kind of have a roadmap of what your horizon. What's that?
Basic collaboration infrastructure,
Yeah. But the thing is, like, that it's so ridiculous that it's not there, but it constitutes a pretty big, logistical leap forward in just that one thing. I think you're going to see, are already seeing, a lot of the messaging, which is going to in turn bring in a lot of new members. And now there's a community inside the party. That's the really, really exciting thing, is that I think the party has not had a community element to it, or a very strong bonded community element to it, that we do in the caucus. And
right.
That I think is actually the most important thing. Like that's kind of the conclusion that I've come to over the course of this whole project, is that community element is actually the most important thing. That all this conversation about like, oh, is it the LP strategy or the GP or the GOP strategy, or is it agorism, or is it issue work? None of that matters. I shouldn't say it doesn't matter, but it's completely secondary to. None of it will work if you don't have like a bonded community. And we have that now in the party. So we have, not only do we have that, but we could try to funnel people into the party, and not without the caveat of like, just please do your best to ignore everything about the leadership and everything about the messaging. You know what I mean? So like, we don't have that hurdle. And then when they come in, there's a bonded community, and that seems to get a lot more productivity out of people.
So with this community orientation, what do you see in terms of an ideal outcome? What do you envision in the next few years that community is starting to look like, in terms of what people are doing and the kinds of things that they're engaged in with each other? Like, how do you envision that in your ideal kind of growth?
So the caucus has what we call a 3-pronged strategy. And now I will, to be honest with you, 80% of the effort has gone to one prong of that strategy. But the 3-pronged strategy is it's party organizing. So that's your recruiting, that's getting people to join their state party, that's forming new county parties, making sure they're going to their county parties, getting ready for conventions, all that stuff. That's all party organizing. And because we had to eliminate the hurdles to growth, that's what's gotten the bulk of attention. That's not to say that we haven't done good work in the other arenas, but it hasn't been as much. The other two is what are going to have to ramp up and what we're going to be putting more and more effort in, which is local level candidates. So when I say local level candidates, I specifically mean city council, sheriff, mayor, judge, school board, positions that if one could nullify the feds. And then right there, the third part of the third prong of the strategy is, again, aimed at that local level, but issue coalitions. So we actually have like a suite of local level legislation that all of our organizers have access to. And we're going to be making up more materials to kind of train them. But the general idea is, in an electoral sense, the kind of conventional wisdom is, we really want to look for purple areas, and we want to run people in purple areas. And that's true as far as the electoral stuff. But on the issue stuff, what you want to find is the deepest reds and the deepest blues. Because a lot of times, let's say you get a really red town in your county and you live there. You might have this thing where rank and file conservatives on the ground really do care about their gun rights, and they really are principled at the very least on that one issue. And, but that the political class is not respecting that or giving them what they want. They might talk a good game, but they're not giving them what they want. That positions us as libertarians very, very nicely to kind of come in and exploit that gap and come in with a gun sanctuary legislation. We're like, we're conservative. You guys are conservatives, right? Like, here it is. Let's do it. What's wrong, guys? And be the catalyst for that change. And I think if you do that, like, all right, you could say, all right, well, if I do that in one town, it doesn't matter. Well, what happens when you get what happens when we as libertarians start to get access to these huge platforms, which is already happening? Dave Smith gets on Joe Rogan, he gets on Tim Pool, he gets on Patrick Bet-David, gets on all this stuff. People start to flood in. We funnel that down into local level activity. Then it spreads out, and we do more and more of these nullification efforts, and we get more and more local level candidates elected. What I think is the most important about that is, A, you have an oversized punch to affect liberty in the real world as you do that. But then the other kind of more abstract concept that I think that you get at there is, there's a lot of talk about the culture war and how the left has kind of dominated all of the institutions, and they come together to form this cathedral to kind of impart a narrative that aims the state for their ends and all of this stuff. But there's a flaw in that strategy of top-down control, which is that as much as they try to push culture down, that's not where culture comes from. Culture does not come from the top down. It organically, anyway, it comes up from the family, up through the community. So when you're running a local level race or you're doing a local level issue initiative, the culture is what you are dealing with. And so I think if you kind of take a bird's eye view and start to, again, you describe that funnel, spread out action, the more we do that, the more we're going to get not just brand recognition, but brand trust. And I think the more that we get brand trust, we can actually pierce through the tribalism to actually have the conversations and have people willing to listen to us.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that in terms of that mindset of thinking about how to affect the culture and looking for, key ways that you can actually start to make those changes. And one of the things that I was frustrated with the Libertarian Party prior was specifically how they rejected leveraging and networking with many people who are really at the forefront of those cultural issues. I think of the treatment of Maj Touré, people like Tom Woods or Dave Smith in terms of how the LP was treating them when they were neglecting opportunities to actually really network and leverage some existing people's talents and audiences to share what it is, to be a real principled libertarian. So with that in mind, how do you see yourself navigating that and trying to do more outreach, as I think many people on the left and even in the conservative circles, the Republican Party have done fairly well in terms of knowing how to, reach out to thought leaders and get them involved and, and grow that out?
It's all relationship cultivation. So Maj is a good example of this, and he's one example, but he's a good example of this. Is now that we've done this, Maj was basically chased out of the party. He was chased out of the Pennsylvania party, but now he, for the past 3 years, has watched me kind of go to war to make right on that, and I did it, and so now he's really excited. And if you go on his Twitter, you see him tagging Ian Smith, the guy from Attila's Gym that didn't shut down in New Jersey when the lockdowns were going on. He just lost his primary. He's friends with Maj. Maj is pulling him in. I forget the other guy's name, but somebody just lost a Liberty Republican in California, just lost the primary there. Maj trying to pull him in. I think essentially, I think what you're talking about is a mass scale marketing plan of identifying targets. So like influencers, who are the people that are influential in, I don't even know what to call it, moms groups, like these people who are really pissed off at schools, because they're masking their kids, they're trying to force inject their kids, they're teaching them propaganda. Who are the community leaders in that? And then we have to basically go to them and say, okay, listen, here's the deal. Like, we need to stay who we are as libertarians, but we also need to provide value for you. What does that look like? What can we do to make the party interesting for you and give you a platform within the party? And if we can pull that off, we'll pull you in, and then they can start to pull their people in. If you take that basic framework and you start to go across domains for the Second Amendment community, the fitness community, the Bitcoin community, the podcaster community, you can start to get all of these. Again, you're funneling, you're using national level marketing to funnel down into local action with us at the helm. So us as Rothbard and Ron Paul libertarians, we're kind of guiding the party. So hopefully through osmosis, through our educational outreaches and stuff like that, they assimilate into the party while we're funneling them into these local level actions. The party becomes more principled, it becomes more effective, and it builds that brand trust. And we're kind of back in the same feedback loop that I described before.
Right. And I think that it's important to note, as you were stating, that when you're bringing in people, the point is that these are libertarian issues. So these are not issues that it's like, oh, you're just a celebrity and we want to just get you in because you're cool kind of thing. It's right. No, this person has to have a really strong principled libertarian position on something enough that they can be reached out on and brought in on the rest of the things, or they're on that way there. And I think that's...
I think of Colion Noir.
Right. Like Colion Noir.
Oh, he is totally gettable. He wanted to vote Libertarian in 2016, believe it or not. And then the party made a great decision and so Colion Noir, NRA former board member, wanted to vote Libertarian. Libertarians put up anti-gun Bill Weld.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, like,
Friends
and
with Hillary Clinton.
Right.
And everyone,
Republican
and they're like,
governor.
yeah, you should vote for him because he used to be a governor. He's
Yeah.
electable. I'm like,
Right.
he's not going to give you the cutting edge to beat whoever it was at the time,
Yeah.
Trump and Hillary. Like,
and this is why I love Maj so much, because Maj is one of the only people that I know who is a libertarian, but he also has 2 feet firmly planted in very prime demographics. So like some people call it the Black conservative movement. I don't like that. I call it the dissident Black movement. I've been to some of these events. There's more ideas than just conservatism floating around in there.
Yeah.
So Maj has got 1 foot planted firmly in that demographic, and then also the gun community itself. He's very legitimized in the eyes of the gun community itself. So he can pull both of those in now that it's not a raging embarrassment to do so.
Mhm.
And he has that passion and fire in him. I mean, he's a good speaker for liberty. He's someone that is looking to connect and, is trying to break things down in a layman terms. So it's good to have.
I love Maj.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that that's, a great point that you've made here about how, you're actively looking for those opportunities and then actively leveraging those who have those connections and have those, means to reach people that just simply others cannot, whatever it is that they're, not either cool enough or they're not, principled enough or they're not skilled enough, whatever, to actually do it themselves. It's really awesome to have that network. So with that in mind, what do you see in terms of the future for different libertarian events and things like that? As someone who has gone to conventions and state party stuff and other small meetups and this or that, how do you see the influence of the Mises Caucus impacting those events from small to large? What do we start to see differently? Whenever we're having those types of libertarian meetups.
So this isn't one of the prongs of the 3-prong strategy per se, but it is also something that we want to ramp up, which is basically, I call it culture building within the caucus. And at this point within the party, given the somewhat blurred lines. But what do I mean by that? The party doesn't throw events, and when they do, it's always the same people who have been around for 30 years that are coming, and it's the donors that they like and all this stuff. It's not, and it's older, there's not much youthful energy. And again, it all goes back to the Ron Paul thing, the energy that comprised the Ron Paul revolution and how that brought people together, and they did their own events and their own meetup groups and their, this and that. So like we want to invest in more events, and those events have to be purposeful. It can't just be, oh, let's all go to a bar. That might be an after party, but right. So what we're doing, we had a pilot program that we started last year that we hopefully want to do more of this year. If not, worst case scenario, it'll start to scale up next year, but that we call our Take Human Action Tour concept. And the idea is that we get the stars of the movement, we put them on a tour to college campuses to talk about the issues that matter to us and the strategy that we're trying to put in. So like this would mean like putting Michael Bolden on the road to talk about the importance of nullification. It would look like Daniel McAdams or Scott Horton talking about foreign policy. It might talk, or Scott Horton, or no, not Scott. I already said that. Tom Woods talking about secession. And kind of just bringing all of our all-stars, working with student groups, bring students out, engaging them, and then using that as both an educational and an outreach mechanism. And then maybe you can go to a bar afterward and stuff like that. But the events have to be purposeful. They have to generate excitement, and they have to be fun, So that's something I definitely want to scale up and improve on.
I don't think I've ever seen the Libertarian Party do that, so is that what you would run it under too? Like hosted by the Libertarian Party, these sort of college campus tours?
I'm the chair of the caucus, not the party. So yeah. So it would be Mises Caucus events. These right. I would hope that the party would launch its own program to do something similar.
But that's Angela, right? Like
that's Angela in the LNC. And so like this is going to be one of the things that's going to be very interesting for me to move forward, is to figure out and delineate the comparative advantages of the two organizations moving forward. And I think I already know what that is. Caucus is probably going to be the thing that leads on issues, events, stuff like that. The party is probably going to lead on ballot access, candidates, things like that, and we'll support
big national stuff.
Well, I think that's really good what you said too with the college campus thing, because I come from a background, I've spent 7 years in post-secondary educational institutions, between undergrad and grad school, and I've been involved with the full rung of things. I've done, college libertarians, Federalist Society, Young Americans for Liberty, Students for Liberty. I've been involved, everything from just an attendee to an event organizer to photographer to you name it. And one of the things I've noticed over the years is that there's been a degradation of those types of outreach organizations, that they have not been as, I would say, principled in terms of bringing in really good principal speakers. They haven't been as fervent. They haven't had as good of a mentorship. And I know, because I try to, do that where I can, in terms of doing future mentorship and stuff like that with student groups, but it has not been sustainable. And a lot of the momentum that I personally saw, especially between like the 2006 to 2013-14 arena, where it was like really on fire, where you really actually had amazing college student groups that were very active with great leadership, great mentorship, and great speakers. A lot of that has fizzled out, especially in the last 6 years. And of course, especially with the 2020, 2021 government shutting things down. And then, some of the student organizations, having to either fight if they were principled, they fought for access, or some of them were cowardly and didn't fight and just were like, well, I guess we'll do virtual or something. And it was very frustrating to watch that. So I think that, doing something with the Mises Caucus in terms of campus activism is absolutely not only essential, but it's a needed pipelining and a long-term growth for changing minds, because it is the start. For many people, it is the start to their path. And certainly it was for me. I started down this path when I was in college. So, if you're reaching out people who are already, in that direction, they're, learning, growing, they're open to new ideas. I think that is a brilliant move forward and could have a lot of fruit for the long term.
I mean, I think it's, go ahead, Pho.
Oh, I was just saying, definitely. And, we'd be there and we promoted. I think.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's a must. I mean, like Jack, you were talking about back in 2013-14, this was a lot of more of a hot thing that was going on. There was a lot of things going on back then that were a lot more hot. There was a lot more man on the street stuff. There was a lot more. I mean, a lot of them aren't with us anymore, but a lot of platforms and personalities and all this stuff that kind of rose up out of that. But then, the human condition kind of happened to a lot of these people, and that sucks. But I think the reason that it was so much hotter back then is that the soil that Ron tilled was fresh at that point, so there was a lot going on. And with Rand Paul not picking up that torch, with the party letting us down on COVID and in the 2020 election and all of this kind of stuff, there just hasn't really been anything to kind of carry that torch. And that's always what I was hoping to get going with the caucus. One of the core observations that I always made is that, the Ron Paul thing happened. It was absolutely electric. The community was super strong, but then it was just one man, one campaign, and they cheated him in the end. It died and it started to dissipate. But if you could ever get that positive feedback loop going again under the guise of an organization or an institution, instead of just one campaign, then that never has to die, so long as the people don't go running it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It was like that unification of having somebody like a leader, whether it's a human being or, like you said, an organization full of human leaders, so you could have just kind of one main rare, kind of cult of personality that is like Ron Paul or not Trump, but that's in that mindset of people look for something to just attach to identity wise. And if it's a person, you can have that. Or if you have an organization with really strong branding, which I think was a big success of the Mises Caucus, was like this little, I don't have it, but this little M with the fire. I got a little sticker here, like this idea of creating cultural artifacts for people, not just like mugs and stuff, but memes. Memes were huge. to spread that around and create this sudden identity for a group of people that is pure, that is something that we can, because there's this sort of published public statement of what the principles of the Mises Caucus were, it was really easy to like share the ideas with people and bring in anyone who valued body and property rights in some area, right? Because that's always, like you were saying, that's just the first thing we want, is we're looking for in a potential libertarian, right? Or someone to join the cause. It's, do they accept and value liberty at least in one area of their life? If they do, well, now they have the seed ready and planted to try and apply that same principle elsewhere. So I think
it's like the yarn that unravels the sweater. Yeah.
Exactly. And Mises Caucus really spelled that out and really focused on unity, but through persuasion, not through, the stupid cultural Marxist forced, unity and equality. We're really saying, hey, what can we all empathize with each other on? What do we all want? Oh, we all want our consent respected, all want our body and property rights respected. Cool, that's it. And we can all come together, and some of us are comic book nerds, Jack, and some of us are like really into hip hop, me, and like, there's all kinds of people. And that was the beauty I saw in the Mises Caucus. And that's what made me become more political, in that I would go to, LP events and get to know people and be more excited to talk even more about these issues and focusing locally on what's going on, networking with people in our state locally as well. So it was so cool to see that energy, and I'm excited to hear about the college campuses. That's sorely needed for those students who are in those indoctrination centers.
And there's a lot of opportunity out there, because we really only got two organizations that are engaged in this way. Students for Liberty, and I never was involved in that. I never went to college, so I was never involved in any of that stuff. But I know people who have gone to Students for Liberty, and it's kind of a progressive libertarian vibe going on over there. And I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I never really hear about them. Like, I don't even know what they actually do.
So I stay in touch with a lot of their stuff, and always, have, because I used to do their Peterson stuff at the regional conferences, and they used to be much more principled. I would say leading to 2013 was probably the biggest point, but then, years after, they started to drift, unfortunately, because they didn't have, I think, strong statements of principles, shrouded in property rights and things like that.
And then new people come.
With newcomers, it became too much about the single issue and just trying to get people in. And then it started to gravitate more toward, you could say, like Friedmanite kind of classical liberalism, more like just, a little bit more progressive, right? But just, we need less taxes kind of thing. And it was disappointing, because it was originally a lot more principled and fervent, with their stuff. I mean, Michael Malice literally went to their 2013 event and spoke there. You know what I mean? It's just to give you a sense of like the difference of what it was back then. So, we're hoping that, some things can be changed. We'd like to see that change, but it's just very tough, as you know very well, when you have an institution that over the years has been transformed, toward appeasing mainstream narratives and big donors in the Beltway. It can be very tough to break out of that, unfortunately. So
I feel like that's what you guys just went through the past 5 years with the LP, going through the entrenched bureaucracy. Like, whoa, some of these people, like Nick Sarwark or something, career LP people. I didn't even know there was such a thing as a career LP person.
Oh man, yeah, presidential races have been jobs programs for a little while now.
Yeah, it's like, wow, this is it's like a hidden political thing, because it's like the LP, so it's not really like state or local governments, holding power, but they have their own bureaucracy and just getting funded.
Something that I'm really intrigued to see how it plays out is I think one of the unspoken things that's shifted here is there's kind of a conflict of visions, let's say, within libertarianism. You have on one side what you might call the egalitarian view of libertarianism, and that's, kind of the idea there is that libertarians, we're gonna ascend through the government, and we're gonna like dictate the nap on everybody, and everything's gonna be peaceful and prosperous. But then then you would have on the other side what I would call the decentralist vision, which is to say that, this one really emphasizes the right of self-determination a lot more and kind of applies that strategically and its implications. So I think this is why you might see more secession out of like our side of things, but what I think it allows for is, over the past few years, I think libertarianism has really been walloped by how weak we are on culture, and how we don't have, like, a lot of us don't have answers or didn't have answers for how to deal with the problems that are emerging through the culture and the control of the culture. And that has become such a force through like algorithmic control of social media and all this stuff. And I really think that the decentralist view of libertarianism is how we address this, because basically, like my state of Pennsylvania, we've got mountain people, we've got Amish country, we've got Philly, we've got Pittsburgh, and like suburbs in between. Like it's different realities, and you can't just like polyglot everybody into one thing and expect them not to clash ever, just because we have good ideas. That's just, I think culture is the reality that real world application of libertarianism bumps into. And the decentralist vision is the thing that kind of reconciles the two, so I would say in that sense, because we're decentralization maximalists, is that we actually have the most respect for people's culture. Because we don't want to impose, we don't want to push any agenda. It's like, if you are a nation in the Rothbardian sense, a culture group essentially, then you should have your autonomy. And you know what? If inside your culture group, the norm, which is a voluntary agreement essentially, it's a little unspoken, but if the norm is, there's some ritual to become a man and maybe that violates the nap a little bit, that's on you. You know what I mean? Like, are we going to go to like cannibalist tribes in remote areas and say, well, you can't do this because I'm libertarian? And that's kind of the difference here. It goes to a question that Jeff Deist asked once, and I really think this is an important question of like, if you got your ideal, your liberty ideal, but the result of that was the complete opposite cultural orientation than what you desire, would you still want the liberty? And I think there's a lot of people who would say no if they were pressed for it. So I think you got to allow those culture groups to be their own thing, even if maybe sometimes it wouldn't be something that we're down with. Like California, if California were to secede, like Los Angeles is not going to become a libertarian paradise. We still want the secession, but Los Angeles is not going to become, and we have to just allow for them to fail on their own, or allow and yeah.
Well, I would say, two things on that note specifically, because I think with the cannibals, they'd be like, oh my gosh, they're going to support cannibals now? No, but I think it's, to me, it's more so, if I were to frame it in a way that makes sense within the ideology, is that it's a negative rights ideology, right? Libertarianism, voluntarism is firstly about individual practice. So this is not a matter of like, oh, like this is ethical for people to do, if they're doing something wrong, but it's rather that the change for the world starts with you. What's in your control? You have the ability to control your body. You have the ability to control your property. You have the ability to educate your own children, to share your knowledge with friends and family. So your locus of control is not the whole world. You can't manage and centrally plan everything, but you can be the change you want to see. And I think that ties into this idea of the decentralization, which is, hey, how can we find ways for people to live more so in alignment with their values through breaking up state power and getting rid of that monopolization of force, which, as you well know, is what enables mass harms to happen. Because when you could take from broader and broader groups of people, you can fund bigger and bigger regimes of oppression. And so, tying that all together, that's really the core. It's not that there aren't ethical harms and things that can be advocated for to be ended, but the idea that you're going to, through violent force, change everybody and everything, that is what I think flies in the face of what is libertarian values. And that's, what talks about, you could say with war and other stuff like that, trying to bomb other countries into democracy, right? And the blowback, because they're not changing the culture, they're just trying to use violent force. And I think that that's really the core of, I think what you speak to with decentralization is this idea that changing minds is key. Do what's in your control first, and let's help break apart the power that enables the mass theft, the mass violence, mass murder that is unparalleled, even on that smaller level where you're worried about little gangs in some whatever remote region or this or that. The big gang, if we can break that up, we're saving lives on a scale that's unimaginable, really, when you think about the long-term implications of state intervention, state force. So I think that's why what you say is very powerful, because it is firstly a focus on the individual and their change, and on their local area and what they're trying to do in terms of reducing state power and control and breaking that up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, once you have freedom, then it's kind of up to us to live our values and through our actions show that they work best for other people. But at the same time, let's say Saudi Arabia gets liberated, right? Probably still not going to be the best place for women for a little while. You know what I mean? Like it's the culture is going to have to catch up. It's going to have to go through its own evolution, and we have to have the tolerance, if that's what you want to call it, to allow them to grow on their terms. And I think this is the difference between what the decentralist, what I'm calling the decentralist vision versus the egalitarian vision. The egalitarian vision would say, we both of us would agree that how they treat women is wrong. But the egalitarian, I think, would say, well, no, we have to enforce the nap over there. It's like, well, that's a cultural norm that's ingrained over 3,000 years. It's not that easy, so if we here have freedom in our lives and our decentralized networks or societies here in the States, hopefully as we trade, as we grow, become more proper, as we trade, we can export those values in an organic sense instead of through the militarism that we've tried for 100 years now.
Yeah, exactly right. It's that whole idea that trade and peaceable talks, that business builds relationships, right? You don't want to violate good business relationships and trade and prosperity. People who have good things going for them don't like seeing those good things go away. And so one of the greatest ways for people to get a shared sense of empathy and have reciprocity in terms of, they're developing mutual ethical codes of conduct comes from that shared relationship of mutual benefit, which is the whole profit motive, right? Profit is not exploiting people. It's literally meeting mutual needs and saying, hey, I need this. You need money because you want to buy something else. Great. And you build relationships that way. So I think what you're saying in that regard is beautiful. It really is something that transforms the culture in ways that is way more ethical and effective and sustainable than state force and trying to use soldiers and bombs to try to change a culture overnight, as obviously and sadly has been done in the Middle East with millions of people suffering and dying in the process.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So when it comes to your own personal journey and work and things like that, as far as your own personal next steps, what are you prioritizing this upcoming year for yourself in terms of what it is that's your kind of main focuses?
So I'm going to be kind of shifting my role in the organization a little bit. We have Jeff Douglas. He is our national organizer. So he basically organizes the organizers within the party and all of that kind of thing. We have Laney, who is our marketing director. We have Brody, who is our IT director. We have Whitney, who is our candidate director. There's no issues director. And so I'm going to be shifting my role to kind of assume that. And I think I have to be the one that does that, because I think what that's going to entail is kind of going out to issue groups of all kinds and kind of forming relationships with their leaders, and then trying to sell them. I'll come up with a better pitch than this, but the short version is, listen, I am at the top of an organizational infrastructure that just took over the third largest party in the country. Okay. Now I know you don't care about that, but that's not my point. My point is we have that organizational infrastructure, and I can aim it at other things, and I want to aim it at the same thing that you want to aim it at. So I need you to tell me where the top 10 hotspots are for this issue that is viable, and I will deploy people. Like, I need you to tell me. And do it. So it could be, one that's really important to me, which is probably funny for people to hear, is the psychedelic thing. Like I really think is got deeper implications than it might seem on the surface. Guns is a big one now. All kinds of economic stuff, from like licensing to minimum wage. I think there's a lot of different issues that we can form these relationships with, and then get our people armed with legislation and start, doing that game.
Do you see in that regard yourself working toward many types of ballot initiative, things like that, like orchestrating the actual,
both? It depends on the state, so like in my state in PA, we don't have ballot initiatives. So I got to go straight to city councilors and stuff. But I have decriminalized weed where I live. And I now have a former state senator who lives in my town, as well as my city councilor from my district in the town, interested in both Brianna's law and psychedelics, which I did not think was going to happen. Now, we don't even have legal weed in this state. So like, let's say I get psychedelics in my town. My next move would be to go to all of the weed groups in the state and be like, the window is shifted. Like the window is shifted. I got psychedelics in my town. All of you need to be emailing all of your people every day to go to their city councils, and maybe we can get legalization in the state, and then we can move on to psychedelics from there, all that kind of stuff. And Pennsylvania has a lot of rural red areas too. So we can work gun sanctuaries. Like there's a lot that could be done. So that's going to be one of my focuses. The other focus is, and this is going to be like an envelope push for me, is fundraising. We're going to need to make more money to do all these college events and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. And, it's funny that you mentioned fundraising, because it's so, it just never ceases to amaze you when it comes to this field, that there's so many people who, they say they're libertarians, they say they, appreciate economics and the free market, and they have no connection about what it takes to sustain a movement and to actually get things done and to fund it. Like it ain't free, folks. In order to get this stuff done, people have to have gas in the car to go to places. They have to have the resources for flyers and to be able to, rent out venues and to be able to possibly bring in food to attract people, and actually get them to want to sit down and hear what you have to say. It is not easy. It takes a crap ton of work. It takes a lot of money, and that's not a dirty or bad thing. Like, it is a good thing. It's people subjectively showing that they value what you're doing. And I think that, people should definitely check out the Mises Caucus and financially support what you're doing, because again, what you're doing is unique, it's effective, and it's proven already in terms of what you've already accomplished so far on what is, and people are shocked when I tell this. I'm like, you are not this think tank project. You're not like a billionaire. You're literally like a guy who's like, okay, I've had enough. So I'm like, guys, like, do you not get this? Like,
True.
You know what I mean? Like, he just
that's
decided.
why it makes sense that you're going to be the issues director, because that's like your foundation. You started off like helping people locally and being passionate about connecting with like-minded people in your actual community, like around you, your day-to-day life, who you trade with in the actual market near you. So
well, I would say that the thing that drives me, and I said this on John Onermatt's podcast the other night, is something happened to me with the Ron Paul thing that apparently was pretty unique to me. And at the time, I thought we were all going through this experience, but that was obviously not the case. Something more than just an intellectual awakening happened with me with the Ron Paul thing. This is about to get a little corny, a little melodramatic, but it's true. At the time in my life where Ron Paul entered my life, I was a young man. I was very depressed for a pretty long time, to the point of like suicidal ideation, and Ron Paul gave me a glimpse of the kind of person that I want to be like, and he kind of and just by getting that glimpse, I started to unravel the kind of the paradigms in my mind that maintain my own depression. Because prior to this happening, and shrooms were a part of this too, but prior to this happening, I didn't think of myself as depressed. I never thought of that. It was way worse. I thought this is what it meant to be me. And that that this was intrinsic to my experience, that this was a fool's errand to ever think anything other of, and you're setting like to expect more, and you're setting yourself up for failure. So you might as well just get fucking used to it. And when I got that glimpse, it gave me the beginnings of a pathway out, that I didn't have to be like this. You know what I mean? That I could strive to be like that, you know, and so, you know, that's the thing that really, I would say, in my core drives me, because in a real way, this stuff like kind of saved my life. And so now I kind of feel like, again, it's going to get melodramatic, but I kind of feel like I owe my life to this stuff now because of that. And the more that I've walked down that path in an earnest fashion, the better my life has gotten. So I'm going to keep going.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious, what were those specific things? I have Ron Paul right here on my shirt. What were those specific characteristics or virtues you saw in Ron Paul that really inspired you to look at yourself differently? And
mainly the courage. The courage was the thing that, you know, because he just didn't back down, you know, and he was this sweet old doctor. You know, it's not like he was like a Trump figure about it, where he's like kind of a dick. You know what I mean? Like he was just this sweet old man, but he was fierce. You know, he was fierce and he was immovable. But again, it wasn't this like, I don't even know how to describe it, like this jerk unmovable thing like Trump. It was just principled unmovable, consistent unmovable, courageous unmovable. You know, it was all the positive elements. And you know, that I think that is the thing that really got me, you know, to know that, you know, and to know that he'd been like this for like 40 years, despite all the lobbyists, despite everything he wanted to do failing and getting worse. You know what I mean? Like, and over time, you know, despite everything, despite being, you know, we think we're alienated. You know what I mean? Well, I mean, I don't know how widespread that is anymore, but like, imagine being that guy in 1972. Yeah. You know, like the first time that he was elected in Congress. You know, imagine that. Like, that's
all those talk show hosts that were
and then as I kind of got further down this rabbit hole, you know, imagine being Mises and you know, being in the trenches in World War I and literally saving Vienna from communism, only later to have to flee Vienna from Nazis. You know, like, we come from a very strong tradition that we have a responsibility to. So I think that is the thing that really got me, is the courage.
Oh, I love that. Literally, this says "Be brave." Oh, you see that?
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, good. So that's great. That makes sense. And I think part of it, courage requires honesty.
Yeah.
It requires truth. You can't be courageous if you're telling lies. You know what I mean? Like, anyone can tell lies. It takes courage to just be honest. And I agree with you 100%. That's what we saw in Ron Paul, is like just being as connecting as possible, still seeing the person he's talking to and trying to understand them or get their point, but ultimately not backing down and trying to be as clear and specific as possible with the truth. And yeah, that really, like you said, in the face of censorship and shame and people calling him crazy, he just kept saying it and stood up for himself.
Yeah, I got a little in my apartment, I have like a Japanese motif in my dining area, and I've got these 3 kanji, and I have them ordered what I feel is properly, and it's truth, courage, and faith. And so like you have to be willing to be honest. You have to be courageous enough to speak the truth, and then you have to have the faith to know that the truth that you're seeking and the truth that you're speaking will win out in the end, and that what you did in the aim and the pursuit of that truth is good, no matter what happens, you know? And yeah.
Also,
yeah, no, I completely agree with you there. You know, I would say if anything, I think one of the lessons that we've definitely learned over these past several years, I would say, from the phenomenon that you've brought about to, you know, people like Jordan Peterson.
He's another one that fucked me up. Yeah.
The people like Zuby or whoever. It's I think that the trope that I see most common with all these people is they decided to speak up to the truth, no matter how dangerous to themselves it was at the time. They decide to say, you know what? I can't be alone in this. I'm not crazy. Anybody else? And the fact that they were bold enough awakened in so many people that desire for connection and gratitude to say, wow, thank you for saying the truth. I may have been, afraid to do so, but you did, and you gave me the inspiration needed to say, yeah, you know what? Yeah.
Right. Giving a voice
I'm
to
tired
the voiceless.
of giving and ceding ground of, my liberty, my sanity, and my wallet to these 6 psychopaths who literally will run, underage people to Epstein Island and then hide that and then try to distract everybody, from a very criminal cabal of government actors. I mean, it really takes courage when you see how powerful these people are to speak truth to this power. So I appreciate you for, there was just a little fly there, for doing that. And for, being a part of the, I could say, group of people who have been rock stars at this, at speaking truth and getting people to themselves feel courage and want to join in. And I think that is a part and parcel of why the Mises Caucus is so successful, that is so underappreciated by those who don't care about truth and philosophy, is that many people are so focused on their image and their appearance and trying to look cool and, trying to be like,
they're stuck in a very superficial psychology,
Oh, yeah.
It's just status, the status and sophist, they call us names, right? They don't engage in debate.
No.
So
it's an interesting little nugget from like my experience, because I've been in the game since I was more or less since I was 14 in one way or another. And I remember after the Ron Paul thing happened, and I feel like this is like a really corny, that's what I was laughing at. But this is kind of corny, but I'm just being honest. I was young. At the time, so after the Ron Paul thing, I was doing writing, I was doing man on the street stuff, I was organizing events, and I wanted to be, at the time, a celebritarian. And then 2015 happened. And in 2015, everybody went nuts. Everybody went nuts. Alex Jones went nuts. Molyneux went nuts. Chris Cantwell went nuts. Everybody just went nuts. And that was extremely disheartening to me at the time, because it was the thing that made me like, I don't want this anymore. Like, I don't want to be at the whim of other people to the point where I have to change like that in order to feel like I need, if that's what's going to keep the lights on. You know what I mean? And so like, I kind of, it's really weird how it all works out, but I gave up on that dream at that time, kind of under those guys. And then this happened. You know what I mean? Like, and it's just, there's a lot of really, let's say, weird things in this whole experience like that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think that the examples you brought up really do show what happens. And I like to focus this from a fear-based mindset. So the idea there is that when someone gets so wrapped up in their fear, they lose a sense of their principles and their original direction, and then they're willing to do things that is to compromise their principles because they see an opportunity to be like, well, if I could just shortcut this and, maybe I'll get some more traction this way.
They imagine success that they don't have yet. And they just, it's a delusion in a lot of ways.
And selling yourself short in that way for short-term success has long-term losses, because you end up alienating everybody in the process. And then you don't get anything of what you want in the end, because you haven't actually built a culture of people, as you're doing, people who really get the principles and are going to stick with you through thick and thin, because those come first. Instead, if you just pander to that one issue and you're like, oh, I'm going to ride the Trump train because, he's popular right now. Again, it's very short-term oriented thinking. It's not sticking to the principles and saying, yeah, well, you know what? I'm going to call out what is good, if there's something good like a tax cut, but I'm going to be honest about the rest of it. If there's omnibus bills being signed, hey, that's not good, right? Or Operation Warp Speed, right? Clearly a huge violation of people's rights in terms of the theft and the distortions in the market with what the government did. So it's sad when that happens. I'm just thankful that instead of letting that defeat you and say, well, I got to give up, I'm glad that you took the lessons from that and actually said, okay, what can I do better? Because that's what we always like to focus on with everything we do, is we say, how can we learn from those who are successful? How can we learn from the mistakes of others? And then how can we work toward educating others on the ethics and economics in a sustainable way. Because if it's not sustainable, then what good is it? You'll have people around for just a year or two, and they'll flake like, you know what, Yang Gang this time, or Trump, round two, whatever. It's just not going to be.
They're going to catch the other cult of personality.
I think what you're getting at is the other integral ingredient here, and it's actually the thing that resonated with me with Ron, is that principles is not enough, logic is not enough. Logic is very cold, and you can make a lot of logical arguments that are logically true, but don't necessarily give you the best results when acted out. You know what I mean? And my thought experiment on that is like the whole glass is half full, half empty. It's both. Both are completely logically deducibly true. So what happens when you adopt the mindset of, well, it's full or well, it's empty? The other ingredient is character. Like principle's not enough, logic's not enough. You have to have those things in high character or good character. And I think that is the key. That is what people respond to.
I agree there in terms of, character, of course, and execution, because you can definitely know things. There's lots of people who get it in terms of economic principles, but how they treat others in their communication, how they treat others in business, lacks any respect of other people's, time or, follow through. So I agree with you there 100% that, the principles are the foundation, but the virtues and the character added to that is the complete recipe. And I think that, as you mentioned right before, that's what Ron Paul brought to the table. Is he brought the principles and he brought the character together, and that sustainability impact is abundant to anybody that just takes an honest look at what his work has sprung forward in his proverbial children, intellectually and in terms of activism.
Yeah, definitely.
Liberty Prime is killing it.
Yeah, I see that in most of the the really big Ron Paul activists, the ones that were really grassroots on the ground, had signs, went to the rallies, and was really trying to get people knowing about who Ron Paul was. I think they carry on that sort of same thing. You're one of them. I think Jack is one of them, that having that character, which includes courage, which includes honesty, and
faith. That's the other one. Faith. We don't talk about it a lot, but if we don't have faith that the ideas that we are trying to embody work, if we don't have faith that we can do anything about the situation, what is the point?
Right. Yeah. And in addition to it, there's, connection and community. That was huge with the Ron Paul movement. He brought people together. He bridged gaps in understanding, right? Like, he was able to talk to a crowd. There's so many, videos you can look up of Ron Paul, but one that's really notable was talking to a crowd of like Bible Belt Christian conservatives, who are really against heroin and drug use, and helping them to gain empathy and understanding for why you would not want the government to initiate violence against someone for ingesting that. Because he's like, okay, because if you allow that, well, now you're saying the government can then be allowed to take your guns, right? Or dictate whether you can teach your child about the Bible, right? He was able to connect with people, hear them out, instead of, like, you see a lot of politicians, including Trump, would just label the other side and just call people names. Like, you heard degenerates from Hillary Clinton, and different labels. And labels, the problem with that is it can serve, because it can be so abstract for some people, especially if you don't define it for them. Someone can just take whatever label you have and imagine something totally different than what you're really meaning. So that's
let me give you an example. You
got to be clear with what you stand for as clearly as possible. And yeah, go ahead with your example.
I am the face of Hate Watch.
What is that? I didn't even.
So the Southern Poverty Law Center,
oh, wow,
put out that article, and the article was under, I don't know all of their structures or whatever, but the article was put out under Hate Watch, and the on the preview, like the cover of the article is such hate mongers as Patrick Byrne, the former Overstock CEO. What? Jeremy Kaufman, and then me with my goofy, and then me with my goofy
Yeah.
and yeah, like
kind of a funny picture. I thought that too when they put that. You need to demonize him a lot better than you did, because you didn't really demonize him enough. Like,
is that all they had though? No substance, like, so the label hate watch.
Like,
no, it's just hate watch. You know, some people say they're all right, some people say they're racist, others say they're Nazis, and yeah. But it's great, because you know what's going to happen is, and it's already starting to happen, is that Southern Poverty Law Center article is now going to be used as a source for other hate articles. And this is great. Like, this is great, because that means we're scaring them, and they're going to try to come after us. And what's going to happen is, if they really pile on and do this, which I fucking hope they do, if they really pile on, they're going to make us famous. And then what's going to happen? You're going to have some subset of complete idiot progressives that don't know anything about us, that read it and say, "Oh, Mike Heise is a white nationalist. Fuck it."
Yeah.
But then you're going to have other people and be like, "That dude's face is pretty goofy. I'm going to the website and you know, and read the platform and be like, what the." You know what I mean? Like
mushrooms. Oh, it's so full of hate.
Yeah, exactly. And then what happens is, when that experience happens to people, when people are overtly lied to, and then they go and look it up for themselves, those are the most ardent defenders of that you're going to get. So I hope they make us famous. I really do. I am ready. I am not afraid of it. And we will win out. I mean, that's what I wrote a post about this, but like that feedback loop, because what happens is, no matter how often they're proven time and time and again that I'm not a hate leader, it doesn't matter. It's the media. The media isn't there for truth. They're there to implement the vision of the regime. You know what I mean, or the narrative of the regime.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
And so what happens is, they are absolutely and positively incapable of ever admitting that they're wrong. You know, so you can basically take on a bull and matador relationship with them with this. You know what I mean? And entice them to write more and more of these ridiculous articles. Normal people know that they're all full of shit. You know, like and so you end up getting, like on the surface, the media might have me labeled as a hate monger, but then the people who actually look and experience and all this stuff, they'll be with us. And this is exactly what happened with Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson became a global cultural phenomenon for good through this feedback loop. So I hope we get all kinds of hate articles.
Yeah,
well,
definitely.
I mean,
just
exactly.
using the platform. I mean, kind of reminds me of what Trump did. He kind of understand, like, you know, that's like a way, having that publicity. It's a way to get your stuff out there. And so now he suddenly has this vocal platform. It's not like we agree with him, but it's just that same idea of like, okay, if you understand what attracts these people, because you know they're writing these hit pieces, they're trying to push their agenda, you know the specific agenda for the New World Order they're trying to push, you can have them actually make stuff about you. And it is a good sign that they're scared, right? I mean, to be up there, you know, with, I'm sorry, who did you say the two?
Trump got elected president, but I think the better example is Jordan Peterson.
Oh no, I'm sorry. In your hate article,
Jeremy Kaufman and Patrick Byrne from Overstock.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry about that. Okay, so you like Patrick Byrne, dude, of the CEO of Overstock. He got on like national TV and interviews about how he was leaving, selling his stocks, all this stuff. You know, eventually talking and trying to allude to what was happening with Epstein and being scared. You know, like that's that level where they're actually seeing you're making a cultural impact. And same thing with Jeremy Kaufman, providing an outlet with Odyssey, really becoming impactful that way, and through the Free Thought Project, becoming a huge proponent there. You know, they're seeing the big moves and initiatives and organizations.
Is he on the Free Thought Project too?
Not Kaufman, no.
Oh, not like on it, but I see him like vocally support it. Like he's like,
they're great, yeah,
promoter of it, you know, culturally. Yeah. So that to me shows that they're afraid and they're keeping their eye out on who are the biggest organizers of people taking human action, like literally. And I think it's, you know, people like you with the Mises Caucus. We're going to see what's going to happen nationally with the LP, but really, really exciting stuff. And this is really the culmination of so many different interactions over the past decade.
Yeah.
And people trying to have babies and relationships while pushing for liberty, Jason Bassler making memes on the side, writing an article here and there, like Carrie Wedler trying, dealing with our families, and here you go, some sweet successes here and there. So it's great to see.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to make one last comment of,
Sure.
I think you're also going to start to see and have already started to see the Libertarian Party promote, it's the Libertarian Party. It's going to promote its candidates. It's got to. But I think you're going to start to see the Libertarian Party promote non-state actions that for liberty as well. They've already, I think for the first time in the entire history of the Libertarian Party, which is really sad, promoted the Free State Project.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're going to start to see them promote Bitcoin. I think you're going to start to see them promote homeschooling. I think you're going to start to see them promote farmers markets. You know what I mean? And all kinds of stuff to again, these are all culture building activities. We're building our own communities. We're building our own outlets. We're building our own stuff. And if you can incorporate all of that in a unified libertarian vision that, okay, yes, it's going to have the political element to it, but it also has all of this stuff. Because that's what people are missing. Even in your comments, I see some I see people voting for a ruler. Little do you know, in all of our chats, people are like, hey, man, my car just broke down. I'll be over to help you tomorrow. Oh, I'm moving. I'll be over to help you. The community element of what has been built here is intense. And a lot comes out of that.
Definitely.
Yeah, I would say that exactly on the heels of what you're saying, that it's this alternative economic outlook that I think really is what ultimately is going to sustain everything that's being done by you and people in that zone of really developing the cultural change, because we need exits from the corporate state cronyism that's going on out there, because it's really bad to keep funding people who genuinely hate our existence and who really just want to eradicate any sense of liberty out there in the world. So the more opportunities that there are for people to exit, whether it is in food with, different types of libertarian-owned farmers and things like that. It could be candles. It could be, organizations like the LPMC. It could be music. It could be comics. It could be, anything with clothing, whatever it is, like Tuttle Twins and their books. I just think that is a beautiful thing. And the more people are able to divert money away from the state and or aligned corporations that obviously love the cronyism they have with the state, the better. So on that note specifically, what are the ways that people can get involved with and support the LPMC?
So you want to go to takehumanaction.com. You want to sign up for our email list. If you do that, not only will you sign up for our email list, but your information will be routed to your state organizer. So they will reach out to you and try to pull you into this network that I keep talking about, this community that I keep talking about. If you like the gear that Jack and Fo here are rocking, I really appreciate it, guys. You can go to misesmerch.com. And we got all kinds of stuff. That shirt that Fo is wearing is just one in a whole line of designs. We've got Be Radical with Rothbard. We've got, Be Purposeful with Mises. We've got Be Decentralized with Hoppe. We've got Be Truthful with Jordan Peterson, whole line of stuff. So takehumanaction.com, misesmerch.com. And I would be remiss to add, go to lp.org/join. If you like what I'm saying, this is what I'm saying. This is what the leadership, the entire leadership, not just the chair, the entire leadership of the LP is now in line with the stuff that I'm saying. So go to lp.org.
Takeover.
Hell yeah. So we did it. So now you don't have to be embarrassed to go to lp.org/join. And whether it's $2,500 or $25 or $1,500 for a lifetime membership, join and join the community.
Awesome. Well, seriously, thank you so much, Michael, for being generous. And I know how much work you've done lately and that you're like barely getting vacation time at this point and like barely seeing your wife after all this time. So that you were able to take some time to talk with us really means a lot to us. And we just really appreciate you and what you do. We're going to definitely continue to let people know and direct them to what you're doing for those who are looking to get active in their local area for, Mises Caucus meetups or for, bigger events or for whatever it is they want to get involved with. We definitely try to refer whoever we can to the things that you're doing. So.
Yeah, we'll definitely keep a pulse and see what we can do to help. steward.
I appreciate it. And Jack, you always are looking out. You always got my back. I really appreciate you too, man. Thank you.
Oh,
It's my pleasure. I mean, as I said a long time ago, I knew that there was a number of people who really just didn't like what you were doing, and I couldn't out them at the time, but I just appreciate the patience and the time to let them eventually out themselves, because it is annoying. It is
they'll come around.
I mean,
the social gravity will make them come around.
Obviously, I'd like a peaceful, and a good reconciliation. It's just
power attracts.
It's sad that sometimes people aren't forthright with what they really think.
Sometimes it takes pain to change.
Right.
Absolutely. I think on that note, very last comment is the party has been. I mean, if you go back from like right after the Ron Paul campaign as a libertarian in '88, and you read some of the stuff that Rothbard wrote about the party at that time, he was like, hateful. I mean, like he was like, the party is full of fucking losers. You know what I mean? Like, I'm out of here. And then it was like after that he developed the paleo strategy and all that stuff. And so it's pretty the negative culture of the party is pretty ingrained, with few reprieves, like Harry Brown. Mm-hmm. But I think there's a lot of people who are so invested in what it has been that they can't see what it could be. I think we are going to make it cool to be in the LP, which is a really funny thing to say. And that's what I mean when I say I think the social gravity is going to pull them. What are they going to do? Just everyone's here having a fucking party, and they're just going to sit over there on the sidelines like, "These fucking assholes." You know what I mean? Like when we want you here, you know what I mean? Having fun with us. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. I think that the most attractive way to build that community is that you're not just promoting liberty and getting people to understand everything and building character, but you're actually having a good time with it. Because with everything I do, I say, what's the point of all this work and all this activism and all this sharing knowledge if you don't enjoy your life? What was the point, right? If you hate your life, what was the point? You're just miserable. You know what I mean? So what you should be doing should also be enjoyable. It should be building. It may be challenging, but it should be enjoyable. Otherwise, you're wasting your life on just making yourself miserable. And then, of course, what happens? That flows on other people, and then you make them miserable, and it's just a whole negative cycle. So yeah. All right. Well, take care, everybody. This was a nice, unusual ZeroState here, a crossover, but I think my next interview will probably be with comic stuff next week. So we'll update you all on that next time. And of course, Michael, will definitely have you back on in the future to hear some updates once you've gotten some more, headway into it, and you've gotten a full couple months of vacation and actually some time to recover from all this.
Appreciate it, guys.
Especially the Reno, the Reno cough, right? That everybody is a little bit sniffly after from. All right. Take care, everybody.
ZeroState.